I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter.
You don't get what you need, you get who you're being. And if what you get in this world is who you're being, then who you're being is the most valuable thing you can cultivate, and then your business. Right? Because so many people focus on cultivating their marketing versus cultivating on who they're being, even if they're not poor, quote unquote, like what you just went through and all those statements, which is accurate as well. There are many people have the assumption that cultivating who you're being is not necessary, not cool, not required, not going to bring any value. And yet I think Mike and I have a very, very different opinion on that. So cultivating who you're being is what I spend the first half an hour, at least in the morning, spending time on. So Mike, why don't you bring us up to speed on what you experience about who you're being, why it's important, and then we'll get into this like direct tips, tricks, conversations about how you do that and how it affects your business.
Sure. No, absolutely. Well, a couple things come to mind. I have this, let's just call it eternal curiosity and passion for adventure and for life, and that weaves through everything, through business, through whatever I do. Life is this great adventure and this great journey. And so a little bit of my philosophy is if you look at some context and perspective, if we look at like the total population on the earth, which is roughly 8.2 billion people, and then if you look at what's called the total number of folks that have ever walked the face of this earth, according to recorded history as we know it, which is, when I looked into it, it was about 115 billion. That the fascinating part to me is that the possibility of one human soul will never be found in another. Okay, so everybody is distinctly unique and has very unique gifts, talents, passions, experiences aligned with skills that can merge into something beautiful and amazing. And so my thinking is always, how do I always look for what is unique in me and what is unique in anybody else I meet, that can then be, refined and brought to life in a sense. And so I also believe, and you just mentioned this earlier, that like our outside is always a trailing reflection of our inside over time. And so to me, it's going to be, how do I manage my I call it the core four, but the body, being, balance, and business. And so, it's the physical, the mental, the emotional, and I think the outside always is going to be a combination of the inner game. The physical game is going to then manifest itself in every other area of life that people see on the outside, kind of like the iceberg principle. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, that's always been just sort of something that I've accepted as a truth for many, many years. And so part of my journey is to always make sure that I'm winning the inner game, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense to me, because if I want to, as a friend of mine always say, get stuff done. Actually, we use a slightly different word for the S, but I'm not going to say that here. I just want to get S done. It really is my mindset, my willingness, my momentum, which is the thing that creates that. And if that is happenstantial, then I don't have control. I don't have... it's like having a car that's got a gas problem. I just don't have the capacity. Like, is my car working today, or is it not working today? Can I get myself to my speaking engagement today, or is my car out of gas? And if I'm not controlling me, the mechanism, that which is the thing that creates and that which is the momentum, it becomes happenstantial. And now you're dealing with 50% of your problem is just, I'm not there, and I'm not capable of being there. And if I actually choose to have responsibility over my thinking, over my state of mind, over my diet, over my sleep, over my spiritual practices, over, just even a simple practice of gratitude, if I don't choose to have control over that, I'm actually choosing to not have control how I create momentum in my world.
I think there are things in your life that you have direct control over, things you have some influence over, and things you have no control or influence over. As a general rule of thumb, I tend to spend about 80% of my time on things I have direct control over. and 20% of things I have meaningful influence over, and less than 1% on things that I have no control and no influence over. I think something interesting happens when we become intentional about where we spend our time, who we spend our time with. The things in our life that are outside of our control tend to play a much smaller factor. By controlling our day, our structure, our mind, what we put into our mind, and how we fill our time, we create an environment that gives us additional peace and additional control while eliminating a lot of the wild variables. To your point earlier.
Yeah.
There's a saying I like, 90% of our sorrow comes from relationships with the wrong people. I also think 90% of our stress comes from worrying about things we have no control over. I do think some things happen in life where we're simply supposed to learn from, and we have to go through them. We can either go through them with the highest level of anxiety and stress and worry, or we can say, okay, I'm going to hit this head on, be the buffalo, which I've talked to you about in the past. Another saying, if you're going through hell, keep going, don't stop, don't slow down. Learn what you need to learn and press your way through. If it feels overwhelming, sometimes all you can do is take one step at a time or one day at a time. Sometimes all we can do is the next right thing. There's a story about a kid walking through the forest with his dad, and the kid says, I don't know how to get all the way through the forest. And the dad says, do you know where the next step is? The kid says, yes. The dad says, then just worry about that one. So anyway, it's quite a bit longer, but I thought I would at least share the opening because, there's nothing new under the sun. And it's kind of funny how like the same questions are being asked, whether you're in high school, graduating from college, or well through a career and still trying to figure out what's next. It's almost like these same internal challenges and emotions they're innate to us as human beings. And I think the more that we can wrap our arms around winning that inner game, the better off we're going to do. There's a ripple effect.
Okay, I have to tell the story. So how I met Mike was that we were at a workshop together, but not together as in we arrived together in any way, shape, or form. I just saw this dude with this hat on, and he has the same hat on. Show the hat. It's right there. You've been playing with it the whole time. And I went, whatever he's doing is going to be cool. Because the only people I know who really understand the ethos, what it is, I don't even know the right term. What does ethos mean? What's the right definition of ethos? You probably know it because it's your company.
I know I do. It comes from it's Greek in nature, and so like the thought process. A lot of this just has to do with overall healthy communication for folks. Ethos, pathos, logos, and then chronos. Ethos is like the character and the substance of an individual. That's the ethos. The pathos is the chemistry and the connection, the care factor. That's pathos. And then the logos is the logic or wisdom of the value proposition of whatever your product or service is. And then chronos is a relevant time frame for the individual. So if business is not flowing as it should, typically, consciously or subconsciously, a client, one of those four is not adding up. It's not the right time. There's not value perceived. Maybe there's value given, but there's not value perceived with your product or service. There's not a connection. There's not a level of depth to relationship, or there's a lack of what we call the guts just telling you not to do it. I just heard, I need to get this in my insights journal. I just heard this and I saved it to go back and record it, but it had to do with something with the amount of I could have sworn it was it the DNA strands specifically that are in your gut? And it had something to do with, the concept of listen to your gut and the amount, I need to find it. I'm sort of botching the explanation, but there's something physiologically and scientifically specific to the gut where you say, listen to your gut. Like, why would someone ever say that has to do with the level of neurons and feel that comes from it. I'll get back on that sidebar. But the ethos is the character, the substance, the wisdom of an individual. Not from the logic side, but just the collective. Can I trust this person? Mm-hmm. And so ethos, pathos, logos, chronos. And so that's the behind the scenes for ethos. A long answer to your short question.
No, it's valuable and it fits inside the box that we've really been talking about, which is how mindset affects business and how it affects your success. And so when I saw this hat and I saw this dude standing there, I went, he's got a story. He's going to be cool in some way, shape, or form. So I said, hey, I mean, it's just random. I like literally walked up and said, hi, you don't know me. I want to talk to you. like literally, like, I didn't maybe even said, I want to invite you to I want to have a phone call with you. I mean, literally, and then like, it took us like a month or two to even arrange the phone call before we were like, oh, hey, we actually do have similar thinking. And so it was just literally the hat. And then the follow up on, there must be a story there that is valuable.
If you look at the collective total market cap for U.S. residential real estate, I'm going to talk about a real significant problem that exists and a way that we're solving it in this marketplace. Total market cap is about $50 trillion of U.S. residential real estate. Total debt, residential debt is, I think, 13 and a half, maybe 14 trillion. Then there's, credit cards, student loans, et cetera. All that kind of comes up to about 19. Of all of that equity, that $35 trillion of equity in residential real estate, about 20 trillion of it is owned / controlled by folks that are 55 and older. There's such a shift taking place. I mean, we all know this. There's a generational shift and a wealth transfer that's the world has never seen that's rolling through right now. But what the point I was bringing up is that so much of that is not, let's call it, well managed. And nothing against financial advisors. It's just not their space. They manage the assets. They help with the insurance. They help with the planning, some estate planning. So the thought process, though, if you like, I've actually built this out. I'll roll it out soon, but I've built out a real estate, an asset performance score where somebody can plug in any of their assets and actually see what their return on equity is. Okay. And I'm sure you know all this stuff, but it's like, okay, got a residential property. It's worth, $1 million. They bought it for 200,000. Maybe there's a little debt, maybe none on at this point. Would you buy that property again today for that cash flow? Well, no, of course not. But they're sitting on it. Why? It's like their return on equity is like 1.5%, 2%, 2.5% best case. Yeah. So one of the things that we'll do is we'll look at is there a better path? And I can get into all the strategies there, but how you're maybe thinking, like, as a residential lender, like how is that relevant? Well, there's so many good loan programs that people are not aware of. They're not aware of if you're not a traditional W-2 person, business, that we call them like the 4 R's, retirement only income. Okay. Revenue only income for business owners, rental income only for investors, reserves only for folks that have assets, but not traditional income. How's that tie to this scenario? Well, Delaware statutory trust is a phenomenal option for somebody, but most people don't want to take their entire property in their backyard of $1 million and move it over somewhere for an income stream. So you know what we're doing? We call it pre-planned liquidity. Okay. We will looked into the guidelines, talk to tax counsel. We'll take a small amount of leverage against a property that will help somebody reallocate, rebalance their portfolio. Maybe they have $1 million. They'll take out 400,000 or 500,000. We don't want to go over 50 because you need to place it. Okay. Carry that, debt service it. You'll like this. If you debt service something that's in the high 6s and you put it in short-term treasuries, you're going to be getting in the high 3s. Your net cost is actually sub 3% on that interest for 6 months. Okay. So there's a little bit of cost there. It's not free, but it's way less than the tax. Now you can bank 500,000, move it into whatever is going to be the best business purpose. You need to invest it. It can't be personal use. And then move the remaining $500,000 into a DST as one example. There's lots of different paths to go that are still, exchange strategy, tax deferred. And no one's doing this. No. Like no one's doing this. And it's a strategy right in front of everybody.